Good morning and happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Welcome to the first stop on the road to equity-conscious research in cybersecurity. I am Aurelia Taylor-Williams, Chair of the Commonwealth Cybersecurity Initiative's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, charged to increase the diversity of CCI's programs. Today's session is designed to level set and open your unconscious mind to thoughts and techniques identified to aid in achieving the diversity needed to catapult cybersecurity research programs. Our 1-hour webinar features a very well-versed keynote speaker and a very dynamic panel. Please place any questions for the speaker or panelists in the Q&A box. Our committee member, Jen Allen, will be monitoring that box. At the conclusion of the presentations, we will address submitted questions. Those that are unanswered live will be captured and displayed on our web event page. Please note that live transcription or closed captioning is available today and will be available upon playback. I am sure that you will enjoy the information shared and will receive hacks to immediately employ in your classrooms. As we launch our webinar series, I invite Tracy Lewis to introduce our speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Tracy Lewis Williams. I am honored today to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. Dr. Ladson-Billings is a professor emeriti and former Kellner Family Distinguished Professor in Urban Education in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction and faculty affiliate in the Departments of Educational Policy Studies, Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis, and Afro-American Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's the current president of the National Academy of Education. She is the 2005-2006 president of the American Educational Research Association. And in 2021, she was named a corresponding fellow of the British Academy. She is a 2020-2021 Hagler Institute Fellow at Texas A&M. She is a fellow in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Dr. Ladson-Billings' research examines the pedagogical practices of teachers who are successful with African-American students. She investigates critical race theory applications in education. Dr. Ladson-Billings is the author of the critically acclaimed books, The Dream Keeper, Successful Teachers of African-American Children, Crossing Over to Canaan, The Journey of New Teachers in Diverse Classrooms, and Beyond the Big House, African-American Educators on Teacher Education. She is editor of 6 other books and author of more than 100 journal articles and book chapters. She's the former editor of the American Educational Research Journal and a member of several editorial boards. Her work has won numerous scholarly awards, including the H.R. Romney's Faculty Fellowship, the Spencer Postdoctoral Fellowship, and the Parma O. Johnson Outstanding Research Award. She is the 2015 winner of the Social Justice and Education Award given by the American Educational Research Association. She was named the 2012 winner of the Brock International Prize in Education. And in 2021, she was awarded honorary degrees from Colorado College and the University of Johannesburg. In 2018, she was awarded an honorary degree from Morgan State University. In 2012, she was awarded an honorary degree from the University of Massachusetts. And in 2022, she was awarded an honorary degree from UMA University in UMA, Switzerland. In fall 2004, she received the George and Louise Spindle Award for the Council of Anthropology and Education for significant and ongoing contributions to the field of educational anthropology. She is a 2008 recipient of the state of Wisconsin's Martin Luther King Jr. Heritage Award and the Teachers College Columbia University 2008 Distinguished Service Award. In 2009, she was elected to Kappa Delta Phi International Education's Honor Society. Dr. Ladson-Billings has a new book that's hot off the press. She recently published Culturally Relevant Pedagogy, Asking a Different Question. This volume provides a definitive collection of Dr. Ladson-Billings' groundbreaking concepts on culturally relevant pedagogy. And after repeatedly confronting deficit perspectives that ask, what is wrong with these kids? Dr. Ladson-Billings decided to ask a different question, one that fundamentally shifted the way we think about teaching and learning. Dr. Ladson-Billings is not only an active scholar, she's active in the community. She's a member of the Links Incorporated. She's a 50+ member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and an active member of Mount Zion Baptist Church, where she is my deacon. I would like to introduce Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. Thank you.
Tracy, thank you very much. If I'd known you were going on like that, I would have sent you 2 sentences. I am really delighted to be here this morning, and I want to apologize up front. I have a hard stop at about 15 minutes before the hour because I have to get to the California Community College Research and Planning Group meeting, but I'm going to dig right in. Hopefully I won't be embarrassed with the technology in front of this group. So if people are having any trouble with these slides, just let me know. I think you should be able to see it. And I asked the question here, who's welcome in the cyberhood? Questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in technology, because of the topic that you are focused on for this meeting. So I start with the notion of an anthropologist who discovers technology. For those of you who are film buffs like me, you may recognize that picture from a film that came out. That particular picture ought to be one that is that comes from a film for the film buffs in the group called The Gods Must Be Crazy. And I use this film because in this society, we talk about technology, and immediately people begin to think about machines. My background is actually in anthropology. And if you've seen this film, the quote, technology that disturbs this entire community in Botswana is that Coca-Cola bottle. They've never seen it before. And it had fallen out of a plane. And because it came out of a plane, which they'd not seen a plane before, they presumed it to be something magical and mystical. And so there's all this tension throughout the group over this bottle because it's, quote, the new technology. I use this example because I want to underscore that all societies have technology. A lot of times we talk about it as if we're only talking about wealthy Western nations, but both the Northern and Southern hemisphere is filled with people, and wherever there are people, there are technologies. Some technologies are material. In this society, they are material. They are mobile devices. They are computers. They are cell phones, tablets, you name it. But some technologies are cognitive. So this particular society, the technologies are in people's heads. They are a hunting, gathering people, so they have to move around all the time. And so they can't carry stuff with them. They have to have the technology upstairs in their brains. And so when they encounter something, they have to employ those technologies to deal with whatever they encounter. So that's what really this picture represents. They're trying to apply their technology to this new material. Some technologies are social. In other words, there are societies in which people are more advanced in how they interact with each other than anything else. And one of the things that people often note about what has happened in our society is that our love affair with material technologies have made some of us less social, that we don't know how to interact with each other. And clearly in the midst of this pandemic, And the fact that we can't even be together, I can't be there with you to greet you and meet you, it impinges on our social technologies. So I want to talk a little bit about what I call the Silicon Valley paradox. And I'm someone who can talk a little bit about Silicon Valley because I've lived there for almost 20 years. It is indeed one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. I looked at this thumbnail when I included it in the slide presentation, and I said, I wonder how many people realize these companies are nowhere near each other. I mean, they're putting them all in the same picture, I guess, to give you an impression of the cluster. But Oracle is actually in Redwood City, and HP is in Palo Alto, and some of these other places are further down in Sunnyvale and San Jose. So I think it's interesting that they're trying to give you this image that they're all together. But the community that we call Silicon Valley, probably running from about San Francisco to San Jose, is indeed one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. It is certainly home to excellent jobs. I can attest to that as a mother. I have a son and daughter-in-law who are both Silicon Valley employees, and they are doing quite well financially. But when you look at who's doing what, the engineers, the software developers, the C-suite occupants are largely white and elite Asian males. And I make this qualification of elite because certainly the San Francisco Bay Area is home to a fairly large Asian descent population, and not everybody is doing well. More recent immigrants are not doing well. Folks who live in Chinatown are still making most of their money within Chinatown, whether it be through restaurants and other small businesses. But the shift workers, the custodians, the cafeteria workers tend to be women who are Latinx, Black, and quote, low status Asian. So there's this interesting paradox in this quote high-tech environment of who has access and who is thriving versus who is struggling. And so we ask the question, what's really going on? Well, we think Google does everything right, that all of us, you want the answer to something, the first thing we say is, well, Google it. But if you look at the distribution of workers by gender and by ethnicity, in a company like Google, what you will see is that 53% of the workers at Google are white, 39% are of Asian descent. So we're already talking about over 90% of their workforce being white or Asian, and 80% of it being men. This disproportionality is the challenge that the industry is facing, and we see it replicated in our colleges and universities. So let's talk about the nature of the problem. Well, you have something that's called the founder effect, and that is during the 1980s, the major growth in the tech sector was founded by white men, and some of these faces are very familiar to you. So that's the ongoing narrative. But because that was the narrative, you have a founder effect in which tech startup culture is very favorable to people who are similar to those who began this movement. So in other words, one of the ways that Silicon Valley has been able to thrive is on something known as venture capital. And who is willing to give money to who? Well, the tendency was to give money to people who look like founders in this industry. And that pattern has made it tough for other people to break into this club. So the first part of the nature of the problem is what I'm calling the founder effect. The second part of the nature of the problem, of course, is a pipeline problem. There is what we call a leaky stem pipeline. So just take a look at the diagram that I picked up from Business and Education. It says you have 4.01 million ninth graders. These are our freshmen. Okay, so these are the young people who can go into the field that are really our universe. 2.8 million of them will graduate from high school. So you see the first leak happens before the tech folks get anywhere near them. That half of these kids almost don't make it through high school. Now, I certainly know that technology is one of those sectors that the credentials don't necessarily mean that you will be successful. You know, when I showed those founders early on, you know, a lot of those people didn't finish school. We know that Steve Jobs did not finish school. He spent all that time at Reed College. He wasn't even enrolled. He had dropped out. We know Bill Gates dropped out. So we know that that's not the guarantee, but clearly it is important for our young people to make it through high school. Almost 2 million of them do have college plans, but only about 1 million of them are really college ready. So you have them coming in saying, yeah, I want to go to college. Yeah, I'm planning on going to college. But when they finish, they are not prepared. They haven't taken the courses that they need to be able to be successful in college. So they end up entering college in remedial courses and taking a longer time and often getting frustrated. So you can see the leaks just continue along the pipeline. Ultimately, about 250,000. Remember, we started out with 4 million. 250,000 of them will major in something that's STEM related. And then only 167,000 of them will be STEM graduates. So this pipeline is one of the other parts of this problem that we're talking about in terms of diversifying the field. The tech sector regularly complains about a lack of, quote, qualified candidates, but this is what you're up against. We do know that communities of color have a lack of access to STEM education. If you go into high schools that are serving largely Black and Latinx students, you will see that they don't have qualified teachers. They don't have up-to-date equipment. The pandemic, of course, has exposed the fact that so many of our students lacked basic internet access. 65% of Black students during this pandemic got their access to their classes through their phones. So they were not using tablets, they were not using laptops or desktop computers. They were trying to keep up with school through their phones because that's really the only access they had. And that recruitment pipeline will often eliminate candidates of color even before they're interviewed. This is according to an article in the New York Times, because it says that the hiring process that's used in your industry favors white and Asian candidates above other groups by using recruiting from information sessions that candidates of color are unlikely to attend. When I came across that article, what it reminded me of was that many years ago, when I did live in Silicon Valley, I had a good friend from Louisiana. She had a degree in physics from Xavier University, and then she went on to get an MBA at Columbia University. Native Louisiana, if you know anything about Louisiana, you know that there's really a melange of people that look, it's really hard to tell what ethnic or racial group some people are in, because New Orleans has always been that place where all these different cultures have come together. So she was fair complected, but clearly an African-American woman. She was recruited to be a part of a startup company. She was originally working at HP, and she's so sharp, so bright. So this startup company came after her, offered her a really amazing job with all kinds of perks. And she said she was sitting in the meeting once, and one of the folks who was founding this startup said to her something about being Asian. And she said, "I'm not Asian." He said, "Oh, really? Well, what are you?" She says, "Well, I'm Black." And he looked at her and said, "Yeah, but you're mixed with Asian, right?" In other words, the mindset that people are up against in the industry is that only certain people ought to fit in the categories to do this work. And that's something that I think really has to be contended with. The third thing that represents the nature of your problem is that people of color get in this industry and then they quit. That is this opting out that happens. Those who make it into tech often leave because of a non-inclusive work environment. I've kind of always had my eye on this industry because I have a brother who made his living in this industry a long time ago. He began with IBM in 1969. If you go through his entire 37-year career and see pictures of him at work, in every single picture, and I kind of know this because I had to put together the slide presentation for his retirement dinner. Every single picture, he is the only Black person in the picture. So whenever I've talked to him about his work, he hasn't wanted to talk about it. He says, "I hate that job." But what he really hated was the environment. He actually liked the work itself because he was good at it. But he didn't like the environment that he was thrust into. 32% of women in high-tech fields felt stalled. In other words, they could only get so high and likely to quit within a year. So one of the questions for me is, if you're trying to get more students of color and more women of color to enter this field, who are you sending out to recruit? Recruiting is was one of the things that I've been pretty good at and pretty successful at here at Wisconsin. You would think, hey, you're in Wisconsin, you're in the middle of, quote, nowhere. I've supervised 55 doctoral dissertations. 19 of them are Black women because I went after them and they saw that, quote, she could do it. Well, maybe I could do it too. But if you are sending out people who look like those founders to try to recruit women, you're likely not to get them. Of people of color in high tech, age 45 and under, who hold a STEM-related degree, 15.5% of the women and 13.1% of men are working in fields that are totally unrelated to their degree. So they go through, they persist, they make it through that leaky pipeline, but then they don't take jobs in that field. That's compared with 7.4% of white males. Most white males who go through a STEM program and get a degree will be working in that field. So I think that's really important, again, to see where the leaks are occurring. And despite the lack of diversity, many tech companies feel that their companies are already diverse. So just reflect back on the slide with Google. 80% men, but no, we're diverse. 90-some% white males and Asian descent, high elite Asian descent folks. No, we're diverse. No, you're not. So the environment that we are inviting people into. So those three problems that you have: the founder effect, you have the issue of folks opting out, as well as that leaky pipeline, are what you're up against when you're thinking about diversity in this field. But I never like to leave people with a sense of hopelessness. There is something that can be done. So let's talk about what I think of as two things that are likely to be able to be done. One of the first things that can be done is that you can change the narrative. Who else can you include in the story of, or the origin story of, quote, how tech took off? Now you have a picture on the left side of your screen of 15 unsung Black founders in tech. Now you may not recognize any of them. Why? Because they're all in the UK. So if there are 15 unsung founders of technology in the United Kingdom, can you imagine how many people there are in the United States? Here we are, a country that is so much bigger, but we don't talk about who those people can be. Or we don't talk about the women who changed the tech world. And so you have that picture on the other side. And actually, I learned a little bit about women who are sort of first in things like developing STP, or women who were sort of inspiration for the internet and other internet protocols. Most people might know Katherine Johnson because of having seen the movie Hidden Figures. But there's this whole other narrative that we could be sharing. The fact that everybody can tumble off the names of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos is because that narrative has been allowed to be perpetuated. So for those of you inside the field, you have to begin to tell a different story, a different story of where the origins are. You know, when people tell me things like, well, you know, Elvis Presley started rock and roll, I like, hold up. No, you need to go much further back. You need to talk about people like Little Richard. You need to talk about Chuck Berry. In other words, you can tell the narrative the way you want to tell it. And we have allowed the industry to tell a narrative as a story of these imaginative, creative, well-funded white men. We can tell a different story. And then the second thing that I think it's important for us to do is to change the algorithm. Now, I know I'm speaking your language when I say algorithm, but I think we have to rethink the access to the existing structure in favor of recruiting for change. The idea is not to have more people in the game. Why would you have more people in a game that is fundamentally problematic? Rather, what you want to do is change the rules of the game. When I talk to my own students about changing algorithms, I point out to them that I'm one of these people who likes to subvert Netflix. I love Netflix. I watch a lot of different things, but I purposely choose things in Netflix that don't fit my algorithm so that they can stop telling me, oh, we think you'd like this. No, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to give you something else I'm interested in. I think we have to do the same thing when we begin thinking about recruiting. The idea is not to keep recruiting people to put into the same inequitable structure. We've got to begin to think about how do we look for people who will change the rules of the game, because the game right now is unfair. And then finally, you have to understand that the industry looks towards an economic argument, but the transition that you're going to have to make to change the algorithm has to be towards a moral argument, that this is the right thing to do. We cannot leave big segments of the society out. We need, first of all, for better ideas, we need a more diverse pool. But to be more just, we need to be able to invite more folks in. And if I can go back to that first point about changing the rules of the game, in the second wave feminism, and I think a second wave feminism is the things that happened in the 60s, the mistake that I think the feminists made was that they just wanted to get in. They wanted to get in. They wanted to, quote, dress for success, which means looking somewhat like men, you know, If they're wearing suits, then we ought to wear suits. That we want to get into the C-suite and look exactly what they're doing, the way they look. No, that's not the idea. The idea is to get into inside of these institutions and to change things like access, to take some risks that maybe no one had considered taking in the past. So it is now indeed time to shake up the algorithm. The wonderful thing about technology is that you have already, as the kind of key slogan of your work, is that anything is possible. So I would, close by just saying that if you're thinking about issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, think about your end product users. Everybody is now using these technical tools. What is it that these folks can bring to it? One of the things that I think the pandemic has clearly showed me is that young people, number one, are not afraid of the technologies, that they are willing to do things with it that we hadn't considered. Can we say something about TikTok? That there are other ways to really do this work. A good parallel for me is what is happening in the music industry. There used to be a time when the music industry everything was about getting with the right company, letting the company produce your music, letting the company distribute your music. And then along comes someone like Chance the Rapper who says that it doesn't have to be that way. I can produce my own music. I can distribute my own music. It is, as the kids say in the industry, the ability to claim your own or own your own masters. So my admonition to you as folks in the forefront of this work, as the ones who see young people coming in the pipeline, is to change your recruiting strategies. I'll give you one example that may sound really far afield, but here at the University of Wisconsin, I'm always, when we used to have in-person freshman orientation, I was always taken by our rowing coaches because they don't have the same recruiting strategies as football and basketball, volleyball. There's no no high school teams to look at in rowing. So what do? They go to orientation and they look at the people and they say, oh, you're tall. You ever think about being on the rowing team? Oh, you ever think you're really kind of short? You ever think about being a coxswain on the rowing team? They just start picking people. Are you still in a mode in which what you're doing is waiting for students to come to you? Or are you out there recruiting? Are you recruiting at the high school level? Are you looking for folks who might help you change the algorithm and also change the rules of the game? Who's welcome in the cyberhood? I think I'm going to stop there and be able, hopefully, answer some questions that you may have. Let's see if I can do my stop.
Thank you so much for your words and inspiration and the information more than anything else, Dr. Ladson-Billings. My name's Nathan Carter. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer here at Northern Virginia Community College. And again, that's just powerful words that we all need to hear. I want to thank you for your leadership and your scholarship and sharing that message with us to kick off this event and get us all thinking as we're on this first stop together. I'd now like to transition us to the next part of our event. And what we have today is an important panel discussion to extend the conversation a little bit. So it's my pleasure to welcome five important individuals that are going to be leading the discussion here. Joining me on this panel will be Michaela Chamberlin, as well as Padhu Seshaiyer, Judith Obregon, James Nong, Jorge Figueredo, and collectively, they've been working for quite some time within both STEM and cybersecurity topics as well, talking about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to invite them to take control now. We will ask that you submit your questions in chat, and hopefully towards the very end of their discussion, we'll be able to turn to any member of the group today and have a question that people can answer. So take it away. It's all for you now. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan. And thanks for that wonderful talk, Dr. Ladson-Billings. So I invite our first panelist. My name is Padu. I'm going to invite our first panelist, Mahela, Dr. Mahela Chamberlain.
So hello, everyone. Thank you, Padu. It's so exciting to be here. And I will try to be very short to leave room for the other people in our group. I just want to tell you that we have been working together, as Dr. Carter said, in order to create programs in STEM for students. And we focus specifically on at-risk students. And today we are here to give one little tip. I personally teach chemistry at Nova. I have been here for a while. And as Dr. Ladson-Billings so nicely and so comprehensively showed us, diversity is still missing in cybersecurity, even though a lot of people, from what I understand, are making an effort to improve those numbers. There's still a lack of representation of minorities in the hierarchy of the companies, and also, of course, underrepresentation of women and other categories of people. But what I want to tell you about today, my tip is not about diversity, which is a pretty clear concept for everyone. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about inclusion. And I want to say that inclusion has always been very dear to my heart. And Padu, could you please click on my video for, it's just a 1 minute or less. Thank you.
I think we can't go around measuring our goodness by what we don't do, by what we deny ourselves, what we resist, and who we exclude. I think we've got to measure goodness by what we embrace, what we create, and who we include.
So, you know, I've always loved this movie and I've always loved this clip. And throughout many of the past year of my career, I was always thinking about this in private life, but also in a work setting. I think inclusion is an incredibly important aspect. And the way some people say that the I is missing in DEI. So I would like to, leave you with a thought, perhaps, how could you increase inclusion in your institution? That is the homework, because inclusion doesn't just mean hiring people. Of course, hiring people is the first part, but actually creating a space where people feel welcome, when they feel they can express themselves and their opinions want to be heard and are important. That is an extremely important and complex task. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahela. I now invite our next panelist, Jorge. Jorge, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everybody. As executive director of a nonprofit organization, it's very interesting to see how cybersecurity plays a very important role, because our organization was, our website was attacked. And so the question I play is, are we in a world where people are just trying to scare us, or are we really under attack? And I would like to show you what our webmaster is saying. Go ahead, Padu.
Hello and welcome. My name is Paul Taubman, and I'm the founder of Digital Maestro. We're a website agency and online marketing company helping small businesses get the visibility that they need and deserve.
I want to provide an update on the state of the WordPress Union when it comes to your website and its maintenance and backups. Many of our clients are signed up for once a month maintenance. That means every month my team goes in to make a full backup of the website. We update all the plugins, do any WordPress core updates, optimize the database, clear any spam comments, etc. We do this once a month. However, in addition to this, we also monitor the industry for vulnerabilities that arise in these plugins and WordPress, and if needed, emergency updates are made. In reality, we're currently doing weekly maintenance plans. The truth is that the environment has changed over the year. In the past, there were only about 5 or 6 plugins each week that were vulnerable. This past month, in September, there were between 50 and 60 plugins each week that have become vulnerable. In fact, the last week of August had an unprecedented 75 vulnerable plugins. For us here at Digital Maestro, it's no longer feasible to offer once a month maintenance. This level of service is no longer acceptable for the goal of what the service is trying to provide, and that's to keep websites safe and secure. We cannot in good conscience provide a plan that provides this false sense of security. That's why we've been looking at client sites each week. And even though they're on a monthly, we are actually been doing work on a weekly basis. It's a sad reality that hackers are out there. You hear about the larger corporations getting hacked. In reality, small businesses are getting attacked every day. You just don't hear about them as frequently in the news because individually, the impact is not as significant as hearing about a $3.5 million loss due to a hacker's attempts. The truth is, though, when a small business website gets hacked, it can still be a financial drain to clean it up and sanitize it from any code that infects the site.
So if this is the case, that these attacks are happening on a weekly basis, and that the pandemic has created a situation where small nonprofits could benefit from experts in cybersecurity, who could donate their time and expertise to support organizations for IT-related needs. I think that it should be something that you should consider when you are working with cybersecurity, and is how you could donate your time. I don't know if you know this, but the IT support in nonprofits is considered part of an overhead expense. And that is something that for organizations like Edu-Futuro, you cannot expend more than 25% of your total revenue in overhead, which is a significant amount because the other 75 goes to programs. While in the private sector, there are corporations that their overhead is between 35 and 55%. So please consider donating your time to the organizations that you support, and that will be something that will definitely help us with these cybersecurity attacks. Thank you, Padu.
Another great message. Thank you very much, Jorge. Now I invite Judith.
Thank you. Coming to the USA for the first time as a first-generation Peruvian American immigrant in my family, my community college was the place where I found the support that I needed to achieve my goals. In fact, this inclusive and diverse environment helped me flourish and succeed academically through diversity of thought, experience, and perspective across NOVA. I was able to better serve my college and community. Thanks to this experience, I received the Jack Kane Cook Scholarship 2020, Northern Virginia Community College STEM Women of the Year 2020, and I was selected as a part of the Georgetown University Preferred Consideration Program. Recently, I was a recipient of the prestigious Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship 2021 by the USA Department of State and many national and international awards. This personal experience helped me realize the importance of inclusion, diversity, and equality in different academic and professional disciplines, especially in STEM. STEM areas such as cybersecurity, where there is little representation of women and low retention within them in the workforce and academia. According to the 2017 Global Information Security Workforce Study, Women in Cybersecurity, the cybersecurity industry is composed of only 11% of women globally and 14% in North America. Also, according to the Renee Tarun, Vice President of Information Security at Fortinet, women account for just 11% of cybersecurity workforce and are 5 times less likely to hold leadership positions than men. Another study performed by Elizabeth Weingarten and Megan Garcia describing cybersecurity gender gap found that 51% of women and 15% of men had experienced one or more form of discrimination, like unexplained denial or delay in career advancement, exaggerated highlighting of mistake or errors, and tokenism. It is also found that 28% of women don't feel that their opinions are valued. In comparison, 13% of men felt the same. The same source also uncovered a gender pay gap at every level, ranging from women receiving 3% less pay than men and at the director level to 6% less at the non-managerial level. So with the threat and IT landscape changing constantly, diversity of opinion, perspective, and skill are crucial to stay ahead of the curve in adopting new productivity tools and developing new cybersecurity strategies. Thus, the contribution of women is crucial part of this diversity and an important component of this great nation. With that being said, a new perspective should be adopted in cybersecurity. We first need to understand what is preventing women from entering the industry and what is making them feel less welcome there. Based on that, we can improve diversity recruitment and retention of women. It is also important to raise awareness about bias against women in cybersecurity and put an end to the negative stereotypes which still persist about women's abilities and potential in the workforce. Finally, we can also create research environments that support women in cybersecurity and make sure they have access to mentorship and leadership development opportunities. Thank you so much.
Wonderful message. Thank you, Judith. So now I invite James Nong.
Hi, everyone. I want to focus on the idea that we have for the skill and competency of the cybersecurity that we have in the culture as a perspective as an educator. First, I'd like to think about this concept of fundamental of computer forensic and cybersecurity. It is our life that is being changed throughout the years now that we have to move from private company to government to financial institution to cryptocurrency. This type of security system, we need to stress on the foundations of understanding the core value of the cybersecurity. We need to be able to deliver this to our students as part of this. It's super essential to improve and modify this functionality and its usability. And yes, don't afraid, definitely while the student is going to be in school or the people, we make mistakes and need to have all the students to be able to accept those mistakes. And more importantly is we need to have this passion of learning and eager to explore from our peer, from advisor or faculty members or people in the industry and environments. And we need to be able to explore and allow the student to do that. And this is the early on mistake that we should be able to make. And the third thing is that when we call on a problem in cybersecurity is problem solving. We don't have this problem in the early 90 or 80 or 60. We don't have this cybersecurity problem. And it actually comes from this problem solving issues. It's coming a word problem. We as the people in the community we need to come up with this problem. How do we create the problem and how do we solve this problem? We have this type of problem, and we, as the first generation immigrant to this country and the first in my family graduated in higher educations, feel that the communication level is essential. There's time we know what to do, but there's time we don't understand how to deliver these reading, writing, and speaking to the overall community. And this is addressed to the minority group, the immigrants, and all the smaller group that we have to bring out these problems to, as an educator, to all of them. Now, when we come to data understanding, it is essential that we know, we understand and how it flows before we actually be able to use it. This fundamental of this data understanding have three core values, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability to those fundamentals. And it is help us understanding the security, the availability to assess those data and use and the design of this data protocol. And when we have all these, data management is part of our process of learning as well. We have to make sure that what we are doing, what we're creating is efficient and cost effective. Now, these last topics is cultural understanding and explanations. It's more focused on our diversified problems. It's in diversity or for the minority group, we need to be able to work, and likely you're going to end up working all around the world and understand the cultural difference, the professionalism in different culture and different work environment. Those are essential, and like Dr. Billings pointed out early on in this session, it is us that is bring all this together. And skill is practice, practice, practice. How do we have this? Practice knowledge, practice, practice. And I mentioned this, I like to bring analogy to my classroom. And one of the things I bring analogy to all my students is, it's like learning to putting your pants on for the first time as a toddler. It take practice for us to do that. And in cybersecurity, my analogy is it's like a woman who be able to learn how to put makeup on for the first time. It take time to learn or to be perfections. It does not display itself for the first time when we have it on. However, we do not know the background. We do not see the hard work, the cost, the time, the training, the practice that have been done. But all we see is the elegant at the end as a final result to the cybersecurity, the skill and the competency that you have. And I learned a lot from this experience. Failure is something that you rather fail early on in the games, and it is the greatest experience that we can all have. And I like you that if you have to teach someone or share this experience, ability to open up and share to the rest of the world, those are fantastic things. I want to end my time here with a quote from my mentor, which are here today, Padhu Seshaiyer. He actually have a quote on the tweet a few days ago. He has a quote on a modeling on COVID, and he said, and this is actually applied to this situation we have. All models are wrong, but some are useful. We need that. How do we have to modeling all this diversity and competency in these people? We need that because a lot of this model is wrong. But if you don't recognize it is wrong, we're unable to be able to use it and make it extremely useful. So I like to pass along this to Padhu.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that last message about all models are wrong, some are useful. A better quote would be all models are wrong, but some are more wrong than the others. Those that understand that can understand something about data, the importance of data. So my name is Padu. I'm a computational data scientist, and I wanted to give kudos to Dr. Ladson-Billings and that pipeline effect. That picture that you see there is a program that I co-initiated with some of my colleagues a few years back called Focus, Females of Color and Those Underrepresented in STEM. Started with 19 girls. Today, we have impacted over 600 girls and those girls are all starting in college already in STEM. So we have tried our best to stop that leakage and actually improve it through this program. And many of these girls are introduced to cybersecurity at a very, very early age, and middle school and high school. And speaking of which, I also happen to be on the leadership task force for the first ever high school data science curriculum that is being created. And thousands of students are going to be working on it in the coming years, especially focusing on big data, and cybersecurity has a special place there. So my message to you is going to be following the inclusivity that Mahela talked about, the privacy that Jorge talked about, the opportunities for women that Judith talked about, and the role of failure in problem solving that James talked about. I'm going to follow them with the understanding of data and talk about big data. When we talk about big data, there are these three important V's. Well, first is volume, the amount of data. We're talking like petabytes of data, like the amount of data every day that we have to deal with. And that data is helping shape the future of cybersecurity. The velocity, the speed at which data is coming, in packets, in batches and things like that. One has to deal with that type of, the speed or velocity. And then the variety of data. It's gone are the days that we are only using doc files and Excel files and all that. It's now MP4s, and so from traditional to non-traditional forms of data. So understanding variety in data. So these three V's could be pretty daunting. It sounds intimidating. It is definitely important, but it also sounds dangerous. Without understanding these three V's, it needs to be taken very seriously in terms of security issues. Especially, they will help shape big data analytics for cybersecurity and threat intelligence. And many organizations need to actually recognize this aspect. If we don't recognize it, then there will be complex security challenges. And so it requires insights, understanding patterns. Now there is this three-letter word called PDR in cybersecurity. P stands for prevent, D stands for detect, R stands for respond. Now, if we do not understand, the foundations of recognizing patterns and understanding the foundations, it could be mathematical, it could be, computational thinking. Without that, the PDR may be great, but, the security experts need to understand how to prevent potential attacks before the hacker gets an opportunity to exploit. So understanding that data science is very, very important. Now, the next thing that is connected to that is what happened a couple of years back when Google and its subsidiary YouTube had to pay a record $170 million to settle allegations by the Federal Trade Commission and New York, and for sharing service illegally collected personal information from children without the parents' consent, and this violated the COPA rule. So, so the next important thing is to understand when we use a lot of data, variety, volume, velocity, also understand ethics behind the data. So it's very important, and you heard some of the people talk about it. Now, ethics is about moral obligation, moral principles that govern person's behavior, and it's a critical part of cybersecurity defense strategy. Without being very clear on those ethical requirements, cybersecurity professionals are almost indistinguishable from, these black hat criminals. And so, in this climate where we are just training people for content-based knowledge, it's very important to also train them on competency-based knowledge. So understanding lifelong learning skills and what happens, like failure, for example, is a very important example. So along with that, along with ethics, now that I've introduced ethics, artificial intelligence is great. It excels at finding patterns like unusual human behavior, abnormal incidents, typical of cybersecurity. But it also has bias. So with biased AI, it's everywhere. Just like humans, it can discriminate against gender, race, age, disability, and a lot more. And if you want to really understand that more, you should really take a chance to see the new movie Coded Bias, and which actually is an exploration of a fallout of the MIT Media Lab researcher Joy, her discovery on racial bias in facial recognition algorithms. This was just released recently, and you should definitely take a chance, look at it, and you will really understand what it means for algorithmic bias. And I think Dr. Ladson-Billings touched on this briefly also. So it's very important to give that And finally, I want to make sure that you're all aware of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is introduced by the UNESCO United Nations to provide a shared blueprint for people and the planet, for prosperity. And these goals are laid out until 2030. And cybersecurity has a very special place in addressing several of these goals. And I've listed some of the goals that it naturally applies to, the targets that are listed out. So those are my main messages. I just wanted to make sure that, all these things, everything from inclusion, equity, failure, privacy, and especially for me, what is close to my heart is understanding big data and the ethics and the understanding algorithmic bias and applying it to humanity and society. Why are we doing all these things? At the end of the day, somebody has to benefit out of it. So I'll stop there. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you so much. And if I can have all the panelists turn on your cameras as we stop share and just give a nice big wave. Thank you so much for just a really important conversation. To put a bow on all of this, we have to consider the implications of DEI across cybersecurity. We just have to. And all of you watching today, I know, are receiving that message. As a reminder, if you had a question about any of the information that came through today, please submit that and share that in chat. The CCI Inclusion and Diversity Committee that I'm honored to be on with my fellow colleagues will be looking at those questions and doing a follow-up document or even a follow-up to this webinar to address those questions. It's my pleasure now to turn it over to Luis Da Silva, the Executive Director of CCI, to close out this program. And once again, to our panelists and to our speakers, thank you so, so much. Luis, it's all yours here to wrap it up and put a bow on all of this, sir.
Thank you very much, Nate. And I'm going to be brief. First of all, this was really inspirational, the whole hour. So I want to thank Dr. Ladson-Billings for just a superb talk, as well as to all of our panelists and to the CCI Inclusion and Diversity Committee for putting together this program. We have a responsibility, obviously, to increase the diversity of this cybersecurity workforce, make it look more like the nation looks, and include participation from women, from Latinos and Latinas, African Americans, but also the LGBT plus community, people with disabilities, so really inclusion and diversity much more broadly. And the other aspect I think that is very important for CCI is that a lot of us work on topics in research, including artificial intelligence, smart communities, privacy, so things where inclusion and diversity really play into the research itself. So this is going to be a long road that we're on. This is just the beginning of a conversation. And I really appreciate everyone's participation. I'm sure this video is going to live on in our YouTube channel of CCI and be viewed a lot more times. And I really look forward to the next stages in this road to increase the diversity and inclusion. So thank you all for attending today. And for organizing this great program for this last hour. So I hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.